Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Ryan in Singapore. Welcome to our mindfulness practice. Today's topic is compassion without avoidance. And this topic is one that I've covered a bit recently, and it's just come back once again based on the few weeks that I was away to notice what it was like to get back into my routine after being away for a while. To see, the avoidance, that there was a kind of avoidance, that I didn't want to face myself where I am. And I even said that out loud. It was 2 weeks ago in the yoga studio when I recognized, my teacher was asking, why aren't you able to do this posture? And I said, I was away. And the other thing that just kind of hit me as I said I was away was, hey, I could have come back last week, but I chose not to because I couldn't face myself. And, that was revealing, and that was useful information to know, where am I? And so that's really the key to effective self-compassion, is that very first step, which is honesty as to where I am, and that's what mindfulness is, right? The Kristen Neff self-compassion, or even more broadly, compassion formula is: step 1, mindfulness. Step 2, common humanity. Step 3, offer kindness. And so you can't do step 1, you can't do step 3 if you haven't first executed step 1, because we need to know where we are to be able to effectively. You need to go to the doctor to diagnose your condition before you can apply the proper medicine. And I think that's a really important part. We might take the wrong medicine if we don't know what condition ails us currently. And that's really the emphasis of today's talk. Isn't the compassion itself. I mean, this is a very important piece, of course, but it's that what we may delude ourselves to believe that we're giving ourselves compassion when in fact what we're doing is avoiding the truth of where we are. So and I think that's a very important distinction, because growth happens when self-compassion is executed properly, but growth stagnates when we offer what we think is self-compassion, but it turns out that it's actually avoidance. So this really is kind of the core of today's topic. So last time the topic was the body doesn't lie. And so this is one way that we can discover what the truth is. What the truth of our situation is by using the body and using the constant message, or maybe constant isn't the right word because the message is changing. The true message that our body is giving us, because the body doesn't lie. We can see what it is that's going on inside of our body, inside of our mind, inside of our emotions, based on cues that come from the body. The body does show a lot of what's going on as emotions manifest into physical sensations, as thoughts also can stoke emotions. There's a clear correlation between emotions and physical sensations based on hormones that are released, based on why we feel emotions, fear, anger. These have reasons that we feel them. They're not just arbitrary, and they're built for our survival. Maybe not as applicable today as they were 4,000 years ago, but still have some purpose. Fight or flight exists because it's due to the survival of our species. And you can maybe thank your anger, thank your fear, thank your anxiety, because these legacy emotions that may not be as useful today as they were in the past are what allowed you to be here today, because your ancestors ran away from that tiger that possibly could have caught them. And so you're here today because of that chain of events that was only possible through the existence of fear and anxiety. So That's helpful to understand as we well, and I suppose what helps as well is because that has that the fear and anxiety have that physical mechanism. We can notice the physical sensation of those when they come up and use them as grounding posts to discover ourselves and to be honest with ourselves about what it is that we're feeling, what's going on right now. The body doesn't lie, and we can use the body as that information source in the present moment. So the hard part isn't just seeing what it is that we discover, but it's how we relate to it. So if we're meeting the truth of our bodies with resistance, with anger, with discouragement, then that becomes harder to face the truth. So once I see clearly what's going on, is it possible for me to respond without denial and without self-attack? So this is kind of the space where the self-compassion starts to come in. So last time I talked about what was going on with me and my yoga practice. And I felt, my body wasn't where it was. And there was anger, there was discomfort, there was discouragement. And maybe to my surprise, I went back to the yoga studio yesterday and I found that even after one session, just because I'd only been gone for a relatively short amount of time, I'm almost back to exactly where I was before I left. And that had encouragement behind it to remind myself all of this work I've done isn't gone. It's just a story I was telling myself the time before last. And so it's here. It's still here. It isn't gone. I haven't left the practice so long that it's gone completely. So my teacher came up to me and spent some time with me working on downward dog, one of the, I suppose, probably the yoga pose that everybody's heard of. And, that's one that actually I have a lot of self-judgment on how I do downward dog because there are issues with it. And so my teacher, to my surprise and joy, spent a long time helping me understand the intention and the method and what the core, what's really happening behind that posture, and that I think that helped as well. It helped to be seen. It helped to come back to downward dog with fresh eyes again, to see it again for the first time. And I have to say that made my whole practice slow down and be different. It took longer than it usually does because I was just so mindful of each and every movement I was making, which is maybe, I wouldn't say the opposite, but quite different from the previous time. Instead of really focusing on the moves, it's almost like, hey, when's this going to be over? When am I going to get through this? This is not pleasant, right? I can see this is not pleasant. And because it's not pleasant, there's a part of me that wants to rush through it. And I think that's common with pretty much all unpleasant experiences. And I think that's something that I look forward to as we start to explore the Satipatthana series. What happens when I experience something unpleasant? So when we start to examine the feeling tone of what it is that's going on. So so it's not about pretending everything's fine. And I think that this is the important point of self-compassion, is that we're not using self-compassion to lower our standard. It is about not being aware when self-harshness starts to get in the way of self-improvement. So growth, I don't know about you, but for me, growth is one of the key goals of my mindfulness practice, so that I'm not stuck exactly where I have been for the last 10 years or whatever whenever I glance back and look at past me and compare it to present me. I know we talk about sometimes that the comparing mind, some of the bad things about the comparing mind. But this was another thing that my yoga teacher kind of reminded me as I was kind of like, well, we do make it's the process. It's not the destination is kind of what I said. And he says, well, it's not, you're right. It's not a destination, but there are checkpoints. There are landmarks. We can kind of see sometimes where we are. And it's that slow progress, that slow improvement that helps keep us encouraged and helps keep us wanting to move forward. After all, if I've been meditating for 10 years and I saw no change from the beginning until now, the question I might ask myself is, well, what's the point? Why am I doing all of this in the first place? So, it's not a destination, but there are ways to see what improvements that we're having as we go. And again, this is not a linear up. It's a jagged line that has ups and downs. And so it's tempting to see that small trough and to use it as a focus for self-judgment, to go, well, this is terrible. I can't believe that this, all of this work I've done has been unraveled. And when if we really look at the truth, we'll realize that all of the work has not been unraveled. That in fact, there's still significant progress compared to where we were. But it's really easy to spin that story and say that everything's fallen apart. But on the flip side, let me remind you, and that's kind of one of the keys of today is about not avoidance. The false compassion says, it's fine, don't worry about it, right? The false compassion goes, it's fine, don't worry about it. Real compassion says, this is hard and this is true, but I can stay with it and I can be here with it. So self-compassion is honesty plus kindness. And I think that's really the key message I want to send today. Honesty plus kindness. The kindness factor is good and it's important, but we have to have the honesty on this side as well. And self-compassion might cause avoidance. And I mean, I know it from my personal experience. I've heard some people masking their dishonesty with compassion, and it's really important to be able to be honest with ourselves. So understand, compassion is not the opposite of discipline. Compassion is instead what makes the discipline workable. So we do keep ourselves accountable, and we do it with kindness and not with harshness. And that's what makes the discipline sustainable. So if we're trying to be disciplined to ourselves and being harsh to ourselves from the same time, this will cause burnout. And it's this self-flagellation that isn't sustainable. So to go back to my yoga situation, what happened 3 days ago, last week, I suppose, was that this one hard posture became the entire story for the rest of my yoga practice. And I went, okay, I can't do this, and now and this was out of my control, by the way. The harsh feelings I felt were simply there. As much as I consciously wanted it to be different, it was what it was, and it wasn't changing. And so that's, this is part of the practice as well. Can I roll out the red carpet to myself? That one hard posture became the story for the rest of the practice. In life, that one hard moment can become the story for the whole day. Maybe even the whole self. Maybe we become consumed by the story. Self-attack does not create growth. It instead creates freezing and paralysis and makes it impossible for us to start to make positive progress. And that's why compassion is so helpful in this growth process. So to use it in conjunction with that truth, and the truth that isn't about self-flagellation. So the previous self-compassion I did was what the topic was called soft front, strong back. So the same kind of idea of slowing down, to be tender, to not be hateful, to be patient, but the strong backside, being honest, being steady, being willing to keep with it, to not collapsing and not making excuses. So compassion without honesty becomes avoidance. Honesty without compassion becomes cruelty. So it's this balance between these two things. Compassion without honesty becomes avoidance. Honesty without compassion becomes cruelty. So the other example I've used in the past is about the second arrow. So we have that the first is the thing that happens, right? The challenging thing, that not being able to do that yoga pose, that thing that I said without thinking about it, and maybe not skillfully, and harming myself or harming someone else. The second arrow is that commentary. I can't believe I said that. Why can't I do this? I was able to do it last week. Why can't I do it this week? It's meeting yourself where you are without having to have that kind of harsh inner commentary that comes along with it. And if that harsh inner commentary comes, that's, you can have the third arrow. Oh, to be angry about being angry, to be more upset because you think you're doing something wrong. Oh, shoot, I remember I'm not supposed to be thinking that, right? Hey, too bad, you already are. So now that's yet another layer for you to be compassionate about. You didn't miss the meditation. We're about to get started in it right now. I hope that resonates. That's something that it's just really been real for me these past about the past 2 weeks. That I do find that it's easy to get down on myself when my routine's been interrupted and I haven't been able to be exactly where I am. And then, that kind of, again, even unconscious avoidance. I didn't even realize that I had avoided the yoga studio until I was in there and talking to my teacher. I'm like, oh, right. I'm avoiding this because I just don't want to face where I am. Thanks, Belinda and Elizabeth, for your comments. Appreciate it a lot. Let's go ahead and get into our practice. We're going to be equipping ourselves with a bit of self-compassion today. So get comfortable. So what posture do you need today? That's the very first question we ask ourselves. And there's a bit of honesty that comes with this. There may be a temptation to lie down. And again, not that lying down is the wrong posture, but it might be. So can you find out? What do I need today? Am I tense? Am I tight? Am I feeling like things are super challenging and the best posture for me is lying down? Right? Then that's the time. But often, and I would say, at least for me, most of the time, the correct posture is sitting up straight because of the alertness and the focus that can be cultivated in this sitting posture. And again, it's not about self-harshness. It's about that honesty of where I am. that I have a more helpful, productive meditation when I'm sitting up straight and tall. I'm more alert, I'm more alive, I'm more engaged with this practice, less likely to drift off into mind wandering, into sleepiness, into boredom. Maybe the right posture for today is something between the two. Something more relaxed, but not lying down. So that's step one. Finding the posture that works best for you today. And then arriving in it. What's that mean? Feeling what this posture is like. So we let go of movement, see if we can be still in this posture, settle in. Notice where the head is, where the shoulders are. The tightness, perhaps, in the face and the shoulders. Noticing the chest and the back. Noticing the abdomen and the lower back. The pelvis. The legs and feet. The arms and hands. Where have you chosen to place your hands today? And I just noticed my hands are on my knees today, which is not usually where I put them. It's just kind of where they've settled in. And then noticing that you're breathing. Feeling each breath. And today I'm feeling my breath in my abdomen. I'm feeling kind of the top half of my belly because it's the part that's in contact with my t-shirt. I'm feeling it rising up as I'm breathing in. Falling back as I breathe out. I'm feeling my t-shirt gently moving across my skin as I breathe in and out. And focusing all of our attention as best we can on this feeling of breath. And then I'm just going to name it my subtle joy. I just can't help it. When I drop into that present moment experience, I mean, it's not like elation. It's not like a roller coaster. It's not like some kind of ecstasy. It's just this very subtle joy. I mean, last time one of the phrases was coming home. It's kind of what it feels like, coming home to the breath, coming home to this body which is my home. It's where I reside, whatever I is. So just spending a few more moments observing the breath. And maybe today you're like the last week version of me in yoga class. It's tense. Resisting, residual stresses showing up that won't go away, that we can't purge just by looking at the present moment. And that's where we roll out the red carpet. Welcome, honestly, who it is that's here today. The anxious me, the angry me, the fearful me, and even the joyful me. Who is it that's here today? Not welcoming in the fictional version of me, but the true version of me. The real me that's here now. Opening your arms to yourself. Embracing yourself. Couldn't even be literally. Sometimes that can be something that can be helpful for us. Wrapping our arms around ourselves when we're having a challenging time. The body responds to even that self-embrace. You are here. You are welcome. You belong. And life is hard. So my new favorite self-compassion phrase is, this is hard. Just to be able to say that when things are hard. Just kind of gives you that space to be able to be with it. This is hard. Not to deny. So let's keep our attention at the breath, at the body. So maybe you're still feeling the breath. You can also examine the body, the chest. Often tightness and heat can be indicators of anger. Feeling into the belly. Sometimes coldness, nausea can be signs of fear or anxiety. So noticing what physical sensations you have and using that as a guide to understanding honestly what I'm experiencing and who's here today. And so what I'd like to do today is just say a few phrases. There's self-compassion here in these phrases, and I just want to say them, and if they resonate for you, you can repeat them to yourself out loud or in your mind. And starting with, this is where I am right now. This is hard right now. This is hard right now. I do not need to add harshness. I do not need to add harshness. I can be honest without being cruel. I can be honest without being cruel. I can meet this with patience. I can meet this with patience. I do not need to be how I was. I do not need to be how I was. I only need to meet what is true now. I only need to meet what is true now. My love is not conditional. I can love myself exactly as I am right now. My love is not conditional. I can love myself exactly as I am right now. Now, take a moment to see how those phrases, those sentences may have landed with you. What does the body feel like? Back to the body. Back to the observation of breath. And I notice the moment to moment shifting as I go from the phrases back to my breath. Congratulations, everyone, for making it through today's practice. I'm going to close our practice today with 3 rings of the bell. Thank you for practicing with me. Thanks for being here with everybody as well. How'd it go? What did you discover as you examined yourself with clarity and honesty and with kindness? So what I want to do as we're closing is just kind of bridge into next week. So next week we will start to talk about Satipatthana, I suppose, is a big word. Sati means mindfulness. Patthana is like the foundations, right? The foundations of mindfulness. It's basically an instruction manual for mindfulness on the cushion and off the cushion. So this is how we begin, and we begin with the body. So the body is the truth teller, how we discover what it is, not just the truth about ourselves, but the truth about, the fundamental nature of being alive as a human being. Like that is incorporated inside of our bodies. And I look forward to begin with that foundational truth. The compassion aspect helps us to stay with the truth. That's the key here. That's why compassion is put so strongly forward. And, in the last few weeks, I can't remember how many lessons I've done on compassion, but the idea is that it helps us stay with the truth. It's a supplemental practice to our foundational practice that helps us to be able to handle it when things get hard. After that, after the body, we'll begin to move into exploring mindfulness a bit more deeply. So the natural doorway is to examine the body, and then through the body, we start to build more pieces onto it. So from the body, noticing feelings, how feelings can be pleasant or unpleasant. Noticing the mind, how the mind reacts to those feelings. And how we start to examine the patterns that shape our experiences, because we do have perceptions, that our experiences aren't just there in a vacuum, that there's a lot of things that cause us to judge experiences in a particular way. So just a recap of today, the goal is not to avoid the truth. The goal is not to attack ourselves with the truth. It is instead to stay close to reality in a way that keeps us practicing and keeps us coming back, keeps us doing the things that we know can help us to keep growing. Self-compassion without avoidance is the ability to tell the truth and to stay kind. Let's close our practice the way we do, with some well wishes to ourselves and to everybody who's here, everybody in the world. Follow along with me if you like. May I be happy and peaceful. May everyone watching, listening, wherever you are, I wish you all happiness and peace. And all sentient life, all human beings, all living things, all non-living things, everything throughout the universe. May everything everywhere be happy and peaceful. Thanks again. Have a lovely day or evening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.